The mysterious dark moon loomed ahead, its surface a vast, empty landscape of jagged rocks and icy plains. It was far from any familiar planet. Orbiting a distant star in an uncharted part of space, the ship, a small but sturdy repair vessel, glided quietly through the void. Inside, Jake, the lone mechanic aboard, sat at the controls, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the ship's navigation systems. Jake had always been a man of routine, someone who thrived on the simplicity of his job. He didn't ask questions, he just fixed what needed fixing. He had been sent to this lonely moon to perform routine maintenance on an old research station, an isolated base with a long-forgotten history. As a mechanic, he was used to the quiet of deep space, but something about this particular assignment felt different. The moon's surface appeared cold and desolate, untouched by time. Yet something lingered in the air. There was an eerie stillness, as though the moon itself was waiting for something. It wasn't supposed to be a dangerous job. This station had been abandoned for decades, and there was no reason to think anything unusual was lurking on this forgotten moon. But as Jake neared the landing site, a strange feeling settled in his stomach. He had worked on old ships and stations before, but this place felt different. The station came into view as the ship descended toward the surface. It was old, its metal exterior pitted with years of wear, the paint faded and peeling. But even in its deteriorated state, there was something striking about it. The base was large, but it seemed out of place in this desolate environment, as though it had been dropped here by some unknown force, abandoned but never quite forgotten. Jake landed the ship with practiced ease, the thrusters kicking up clouds of dust and ice as he touched down. He looked out the viewport, taking in the sight of the empty moon stretching out before him. There was no sign of life, no movement, just silence. He climbed out of the cockpit and made his way to the cargo bay. The hum of the ship's engines slowly faded, leaving only the sound of his boots crunching on the cold floor. The station's entrance was just a short walk away, a simple hatch built into the side of the station. As he approached, Jake felt an odd sense of foreboding. He shook it off. There was no reason to be nervous. It was just another job, just another repair. "Let's get this done," he muttered to himself. Pulling the hatch open, the door creaked loudly, as if the station had been holding its breath for decades. He stepped inside, and immediately the temperature dropped. The air was stale, filled with the smell of old metal and dust. A faint hum echoed through the hallways, the sound of ancient machinery still somehow alive, still somehow functioning. After all this time, Jake didn't know much about the station's history. He had only been given the basics, a brief on its location and the necessary repairs. What he did know was that it had been abandoned years ago due to some kind of mysterious event. No one seemed to know exactly what had happened, and that's why it had been left to rot on this moon. Still, it didn't matter. He was here to do a job, not ask questions. He moved through the dark hallways of the station, his flashlight casting long shadows against the walls. The deeper he ventured into the station, the quieter it became. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone here, but that was ridiculous, right? The place had been abandoned for years. It was just his imagination. He reached the control room, the heart of the station where most of the repairs would be made. The door to the room was slightly ajar, and Jake pushed it open, his boots clicking softly on the metal floor inside. The control panels were covered in layers of dust, but they still looked intact. He set to work, pulling out his tools and beginning to inspect the wiring and power systems. As he worked, the strange sensation of being watched returned. He glanced around, but the room was empty, just as it had been when he first entered. Still, something felt wrong. It wasn't just the silence or the cold, it was something deeper, something he couldn't quite place. He focused on the task at hand, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. Suddenly, a faint beeping sound broke the silence. Jake froze. It was coming from the corner of the room. He turned to see a small, blinking light on the control panel, a signal, weak but persistent. Jake moved closer, his heart racing. He had seen the system's readouts earlier, and nothing had been active. So where was the signal coming from? He pressed a few buttons, trying to access the source of the signal. The screen flickered to life, displaying strange alien symbols. Jake stared at them for a moment, unsure of what he was seeing. This wasn't part of the station's systems. There was something here, something hidden, something that had been waiting to be discovered. His curiosity got the better of him. He began typing on the control panel, attempting to decode the symbols. As he did, the room grew colder still, and the beeping grew louder, more urgent. Suddenly, the ship's systems powered up, the lights flickering as the station's dormant technology came to life. Jake stepped back, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. Something had been triggered. The station, once silent, now hummed with energy. And somewhere deep within the walls, an ancient force was stirring. A New signal appeared on the screen, clearer this time, a set of coordinates. They weren't for Earth, they weren't even for any known place in the galaxy. They were for something far more dangerous, and they were directed right at him. Asterisk, the hidden message stood frozen, staring at the coordinates flashing on the screen. They weren't from Earth, they didn't belong to any known system. Nor did they seem to match anything on his ship's star maps. His heart pounded in his chest, and he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The ship's systems had come to life in a way he didn't understand. And now it was clear there was something deeply wrong with the station. Something far beyond the simple repairs he had been hired to perform. He glanced over his shoulder. The quiet hum of the ship's technology now deafening in the empty room. The air seemed to grow colder, and for the first time since landing, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. But he was the only one here. He had checked the ship's readings. No other life signs were detected. What is this? Jake wondered. He rubbed his temples, trying to focus on the task at hand. Maybe it was just a glitch, something triggered by his work on the ship's systems, but as he turned back to the screen, the coordinates still blinked, glaring at him with an undeniable intensity. Jake hesitated, his mind racing. He had always considered himself a man of reason, someone who preferred the certainty of facts over superstition, but this was different. He wasn't sure if he was dealing with an ancient alien relic, a hidden message, or something far more dangerous, and yet, the more he stared at those coordinates, the stronger the pull grew to follow them. Something deep inside him whispered that this wasn't a random anomaly, it was a call, shaking off his unease. Jake turned back to the controls. He had to know what was going on. He had to follow this lead, no matter how strange it seemed. With a deep breath, he keyed in the coordinates and initiated a transmission. The ship's systems hummed and the lights flickered as the communication system powered up. For a long, tense moment, there was nothing. Just silence. Jake held his breath, staring at the blinking display. Then, out of nowhere, the static broke and a voice, faint and distorted, came through. "You have found us." The voice was metallic, yet there was an undeniable presence behind. It's something ancient, something calculating. Jake's hands trembled as he adjusted the frequency, trying to get a clearer signal. "You have awoken the ship," the voice continued, more clearly this time, but still distant, as if it were coming from far away. "The path is set. You are now a part of the legacy. Beware the consequences of your actions." Jake's breath caught in his throat. His hands hovered over the controls, but he couldn't move. The ship's voice continued, its tone growing more urgent. "The coordinates lead to a place lost in time. A place where the power of the ancients lies dormant. You are the key to unlocking it, but not all who seek it survive." Asterisk, the message cut off abruptly, leaving Jake in stunned silence. His mind raced, trying to process what he had just heard. It sounded like a warning. But who or what was it from? He had thought this mission was going to be routine, but now it was clear something far more complex and dangerous was unfolding before him. The temperature in the control room had dropped significantly, and Jake's breath fogged in the air. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to turn the ship around and get out of there. But another part of him, the part that had always been driven by curiosity, wanted to know more. The coordinates had to be real. The message had come from somewhere. There was something on this moon, something hidden beneath the surface that was calling to him. He knew the dangers, he had read the signs, but he also understood one thing. This was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. No one else would have the opportunity to uncover whatever lay hidden here. And yet, the voice's warning echoed in his mind, chilling him to his core. Not all who seek it survive. Jake stood up, pacing the room. Was he really about to risk everything for a mystery that might end in disaster? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but then the images of the ship's glowing symbols, the unearthly message, and the unexplored path back to Earth filled his mind. With a deep breath, Jake made up his mind. He wasn't going to walk away, not now. Not when there was so much at stake. He returned to the console, his fingers shaking slightly as he punched in the coordinates once more. This time, he set the ship in motion, heading toward the unknown. His decision was made, and there was no turning back. As the ship began to move, Jake's thoughts were filled with the same question that had haunted him from the beginning. What awaited him at the end of this journey? Was this truly a path to untold knowledge? Or was it something far more sinister? He didn't know yet, but the pull to find out was irresistible. The engine hummed to life, and the ship's trajectory shifted. The destination was clear, but the journey ahead was uncertain. And just as Jake stared out into the vast, uncharted space, a feeling settled deep within him, a feeling that no matter what awaited, he was meant to be on this path. It was too late to turn back. Asterisk, the path to the lost Placide ship's engines roared to life, propelling Jake toward the unknown. He sat at the controls, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. The coordinates were locked in. The Destination set, there was no turning back now as the ship cut through the cold emptiness of space. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing a threshold into something far greater than himself. The radio crackled, and for a moment, Jake thought he'd hear the same distorted voice again. But the silence continued, eerie and vast, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. No new messages, no warning, just a feeling that something was watching, waiting for him. The landscape outside the cockpit window changed as the ship drew closer to the destination. The stars faded into the distance and a strange, dark planet began to materialize on the horizon. It was unlike any planet Jake had ever seen. The surface was jagged, filled with towering mountains and deep, churning valleys. The atmosphere looked thick with swirling clouds, a mix of dark purples and blues. It was a desolate, inhospitable world, yet something about it felt alive in a way that didn't make sense. As though the planet itself was aware of his presence, Jake couldn't look away. His fingers hovered over the ship's control panel, unsure of how to approach the unknown world. He had prepared for a basic mission, a simple repair job. But this felt like an adventure. Out of a sci-fi novel, a story he never thought he would be living himself. As he descended toward the planet's surface, the ship's instruments began to react. Lights flickered and the control systems gave off warning signals indicating the presence of unknown energy fields. The alien device he had found earlier flickered as well, its glowing patterns shifting like they were reacting to the planet's gravity. Jake's heart raced. Could the planet be the source of this energy? Was the alien signal coming from here? He couldn't be sure, but he knew this was where he needed to be. The ship slowly touched down on the rugged terrain, its landing gears scraping against the rocky surface. Dust billowed around the craft as it settled. For a moment, everything was still to still. Then the distant rumble of the planet's surface reverberated through the ship, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to come from deep within the planet's core. Jake exhaled slowly, taking in the alien world around him. The ship's airlock hissed as it opened and he stepped out, the harsh cold of the planet's atmosphere hitting him immediately. He could see nothing but barren terrain, but the ground beneath his feet was warm, almost as though it had been heated from within. Something tugged at the back of his mind, a sense that the planet was alive, and yet, in the most terrifying way possible, it was also abandoned. There were no signs of life, number buildings or settlements, just the broken remains of a world long forgotten. He glanced at the ship's control panel. The alien device had activated once more, its symbols glowing bright, pointing in a specific direction. The ship's interior map had been replaced with another one, a map of tunnels that seemed to stretch deep underground. The device hummed with an urgency, its blue glow now pulsating in sync with the planet's vibrations. Jake knew the path had been set before him, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to follow it. The feeling of being watched intensified as he walked toward the nearest opening, a large cave-like entrance that looked like it had been carved into the mountain by something ancient. The glow of his flashlight illuminated the entrance, revealing strange, alien markings on the walls. Each step forward made Jake's pulse quicken. He wasn't just walking into a cave, he was stepping into a story that had been waiting for someone to uncover it. The question was, what had been hidden here? And why had it been left buried under so many layers of time and dust? The underground awakening. As Jake ventured deeper into the cave, the air grew colder and the walls became smoother, as if shaped by a force far beyond human capabilities. The alien symbols from the device on his ship now appeared on the walls, glowing faintly, as if they were guiding him through the tunnels. It was almost as if the planet itself was leading him deeper into its heart. The tunnel stretched for miles, with sharp turns and narrow passageways. Each step echoed off the walls, and Jake couldn't help but feel like he was being drawn into something much larger than himself. He wondered if he was just a small piece of a puzzle that had been laid out long ago. If this was part of some ancient plan that he was now unknowingly a part of. The further he went, the more the walls seemed to shift, the symbols becoming more intricate and powerful. He came across strange, glowing crystals embedded in the walls, pulsing with an inner light. They seemed to respond to his presence, their glow growing stronger the closer he got. Suddenly, the ground beneath him began to tremble and Jake stumbled. His heart raced and he stopped in his tracks, holding his breath. Was the planet shifting? Was he activating something? The walls vibrated and a low rumble filled the air, louder than before. Something deep within the planet was stirring. Then, as if answering Jake's presence, a low, mechanical hum began to fill the air, a sound that seemed to reverberate from all around. He turned and for the first time, he saw what had been hidden in the depths of this cave, a massive chamber, filled with alien technology, glowing blue in the dim light. At the center of the chamber stood a large, floating sphere, its surface covered in glowing alien symbols. The sphere hummed with power, and Jake could feel the energy coursing through the air. Thick and palpable, he stepped closer, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. This was it. This was what the alien device on his ship had been leading him to. The sphere suddenly began to pulse, and a deep voice echoed through the chamber. A voice that seemed to come from within the sphere itself. It spoke in the same strange language Jake had encountered on the ship, however. The words this time were clearer, as if the sphere recognized that he was ready to understand. "You have arrived at the heart of the Forgotten Empire," the voice intoned, sending a chill down Jake's spine. "The key has been found. You are the chosen one. The fate of the galaxy now rests in your hands." Jake stood frozen, his mind racing with questions. What was he being told? Was he truly the chosen one, or was this some trick of the ship, some twist of fate that had led him here? The pulse of the sphere intensified, and Jake knew that his discovery had just opened the door to something far greater than he could have ever imagined. The voice continued, its tone growing more urgent. "You must decide now. Will you embrace the power of the ancients, or will you risk everything to keep it buried?" The power awakened. Jake stood frozen, his hands still hovering over the pulsating sphere. The hum filling the room like the heartbeat of the planet itself. His mind was racing, his heart pounding in his chest. The message from the voice inside the sphere echoed in his ears. The weight of the decision pressing down on him. The choice was clear, but it was not simple. Embrace the power of the ancients or risk everything and leave it behind. The chamber around him felt alive. The glowing symbols on the walls flickered and shifted, almost as if they were reacting to his presence. As though the very walls of the cave were aware of the choices unfolding before him. The floor beneath his feet seemed to tremble, the energy growing stronger with each passing second. It was as if the ship, the creature, the planet, everything was waiting for him to make his move. Jake's gaze shifted to the floating sphere. At the center of the chamber, it wasn't just an artifact, it was a key, a conduit to unimaginable power, and the voices of the ancients reverberated through his mind. The power it contained could bring prosperity, knowledge, and technological advancement beyond human comprehension, but at what cost? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shift in the air. The once still walls of the cavern now began to hum with an almost anxious energy. Jake glanced around, realizing that the space was shrinking. No, it wasn't shrinking, something else was happening. The floor began to rise, and the cavern walls stretched higher, revealing hidden passages he hadn't noticed before. This was no ordinary cave, it was a living structure. A place designed to test and challenge those who dared enter. A flash of light streaked across the darkened chamber, and Jake found himself standing in the center of a new room, one he couldn't explain. The walls were lined with large, transparent tubes. Inside each tube were strange, glowing figures, humanoid but not human, tall, ethereal. Their bodies semi-transparent and filled with light. Their eyes flickered open as they sensed Jake's presence. And in that moment, he realized these beings were not just remnants of the past, they were connected to the power he had just uncovered. "You are not alone," a voice said, this time not from the sphere, but from the figures inside the tubes. It was a soft, melodic tone that reverberated. In the chamber, the figures stirred, their bodies slowly moving within the glass-like tubes. Jake stepped back, unsure of what he was seeing. The humanoid figures inside the tubes looked like they had been frozen in time. Preserved for millennia, they were alive, at least, Jake assumed they were. Their features were flawless, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse in tune with the ship's systems. There was something otherworldly about them. Something powerful and ancient, but also delicate. The voice continued, its tone deeper now, filled with both sorrow and hope. "We are the last remnants of the ancient fleet. We are the protectors of the galaxy's secrets, and now, you have awakened us. You have been chosen to carry the legacy forward." Jake felt a strange connection to the beings in the tubes, as though their fate and his were now linked. It wasn't just a coincidence that he had discovered the ship, or that he had activated its systems. This was meant to happen. He was meant to be here. "What are you? What is this place?" Jake asked, his voice echoing in the silent chamber. The figure in the center tube moved its hand slowly as if to communicate. The glow of its body intensified, and a holographic map appeared before Jake, showing an intricate web of star systems, galaxies, and planets. It was a map of the galaxy, one that was long forgotten, and one that had been hidden from human eyes for centuries. "This is the heart of the Forgotten Empire," the voice explained. "We were once the rulers of the stars, but a great war shattered our civilization. Earth was lost to us, but now the time has come to rebuild. The ship you have awakened holds the key to finding Earth again. It is the power to unite the galaxy or destroy it." Jake's mind raced. Earth, the lost planet of humanity, it had been a myth, a legend passed down for generations. But no one had ever truly believed it was real. But the map, the figures in the tubes, the ship, everything was pointing toward Earth's lost location. This wasn't just a simple repair job, this was a cosmic mission. A quest that spanned generations. The alien being inside the tube looked at him, its glowing eyes piercing into his soul. You must choose now. The power of the ancients can restore Earth, but only if you are willing to fight for it. The enemies who caused our downfall still exist, and they are watching. Jake felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Could he accept the responsibility of restoring a lost civilization? Could he wield the power of the ancients to fight an unseen enemy? He wasn't a soldier, he was just a mechanic. A man who had been caught up in something far larger than himself. But this wasn't just about him anymore, it was about the future of humanity. The voice spoke again. This time more urgently, choose quickly, the enemy approaches, the war is not over. Jake turned to look at the map, the coordinates now clear. But the path was shrouded in uncertainty. He had the power to unlock Earth's location, but it came with risks. The enemies were still out there, waiting to claim what was left of the galaxy. The fate of Earth and perhaps the entire universe was now in his hands. With a deep breath, Jake made his decision. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was the one who could change everything. The Galactic War. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stood before the glowing map. The coordinates to Earth's lost location fixed. In his mind, the alien voice had spoken of a war, one that had torn apart civilizations and sent Earth into hiding. Now, Jake was at the center of a conflict he never imagined. What had begun as a simple repair job had turned into a galactic struggle for the future of humanity. He looked around the chamber, the weight of the decision still heavy on his shoulders. The glowing figures in the tubes, preserved from another era, seemed to be waiting for him to take the next step. Their silent gaze, full of ancient wisdom and power, made him feel both small and significant at the same time. They had lived through the war, seen the destruction, and yet they were still here, waiting for someone to continue their work. Do you really think we can win? Jake asked the glowing figure closest to him, his voice barely above a whisper. The air in the room was thick with tension, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. The figure's eyes flickered in response, and for a brief moment, it seemed to look right through Jake. Then, the voice spoke again. This time quieter, but still carrying the weight of centuries. Victory is not guaranteed, but the choice to fight is yours. The power we left behind is great, but so are the enemies we face. They are relentless, and they will stop at nothing to destroy what we have rebuilt. Jake felt a chill run through him. The voice wasn't just speaking of distant enemies, it was speaking of an immediate threat. They were already out there, somewhere in the galaxy, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. He turned to the control panel, the alien symbols flickering in front of him as the ship's systems continued to power up. The map on the screen showed a vast network of coordinates, with Earth's location hidden behind a veil of energy, but the path to Earth wasn't clear. There were obstacles, enemies, and unknown dangers lurking in the void. The map didn't just show a location, it was a warning. The enemies are coming, the voice continued. They will arrive at the coordinates you seek. You must prepare, or they will reach Earth before you do. The ship's systems are yours to command, but they require a bond, a connection. Without it, the power will be useless. You must learn how to control it. Jake's mind raced as he processed the enormity of the situation. He wasn't just repairing a ship, he was now responsible for the future of Earth. He was carrying the legacy of an ancient empire, and with it, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. As if responding to his thoughts, the ship's systems hummed louder, the room vibrating with energy. The power of the ship was unlike anything Jake had ever felt, both exhilarating and terrifying. The ship was alive, a tool of war, and Jake had to learn how to command it. He glanced at the alien device that had led him to this moment. It was now glowing brighter than ever, its symbols shifting rapidly across the surface. The ship's AI systems were reacting to the device, ready to teach Jake how to use the power within it. But with that power came responsibility, and Jake couldn't help but wonder if he was ready. Jake, Sarah's voice cut through his thoughts. We need to move fast. The ship's ready to go. We've activated the weapons systems, but we don't know what we're facing. The map is pointing to Earth, but it's also showing a hostile fleet approaching. We need to make a decision. Jake turned to her, his face grim. The tension in the room was palpable. He wasn't just making a decision about the ship's power. He was making a decision about the future of the entire galaxy. What are we up against? Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He knew the risks, but he needed to know exactly what they were facing. The fleet is massive, Sarah replied, her eyes scanning the data on the screen. It's not just one ship. We're talking about a whole fleet of advanced warships, and they're heading straight for Earth. They've been tracking us since we activated the ship's systems. Jake's stomach tightened. They were too late to stop it. The enemy was already on their way. The ship, with all its advanced technology and power, was their only hope. The ship's systems are sensing with the alien device, Dr. Williams said from across the room. It's not just a weapon, it's an advanced defense system built to protect, but it needs you, Jake. You have to form a bond with the ship. Connect with its power, if you don't, we'll lose everything. Jake looked back at the glowing symbols on the control panel. The ship's power was there, within reach, but it wasn't enough to simply activate it. He needed to understand it. He needed to connect with it on a deeper level. The ship wasn't just a machine, it was alive, and it required trust, control, and understanding. Taking a deep breath, Jake reached out and placed his hand on the console. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through him, filling every fiber of his being with raw power. It was overwhelming, like a flood of information, of history, of battles fought long ago. The ship's systems, its intelligence, began to flow into his mind, merging with his consciousness. He could feel the power, but also the weight of the responsibility. The voice from the alien device spoke again, clearer now, as if acknowledging the bond they had just formed. You are ready. The path to Earth is set, but remember, the enemies are coming. The battle for the future of humanity begins now. Jake's heart raced as the finality of the moment hit him. The battle had begun, and with it, the fate of Earth rested in his hands. The coming storm. Jake stood at the helm of the ship, the weight of his newfound connection to the alien technology bearing down on him. The hum of the ship's systems was now a constant presence in his mind, its energy flowing through him, guiding his every move. He had formed a bond with the ship, but it wasn't like anything he had ever imagined. The ship itself seemed to resonate with him, its technology now intertwined with his thoughts. He could feel its power, the raw potential it held, but he also knew the responsibility that came with it. It was no longer just a machine, it was part of him. The ship's exterior had transformed in the hours since it had been powered up, its sleek, metallic surface now glowing with a faint, eerie light. The control panel before him pulsed with energy, the alien symbols constantly shifting and changing as though responding to his thoughts. Every decision, every movement was now linked to the ship. If he hesitated, it would hesitate. If he acted, it would act. But the most pressing question remained, could he control it when it mattered most? As Jake's hands hovered over the controls, the voice of the alien device came through once again. Its tone both calm and grave. The enemy is nearly upon you. You have no time left. Prepare for battle. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He turned to look at the team, who were gathered around the control room. They were ready. But were they ready for what was coming? The ship's weapons systems were online. But what if they weren't enough? The alien fleet was massive, more ships than Jake could count. He had to trust the ship, trust in the power they had awakened. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still outmatched. Sarah, standing at the communications station, turned to him. We've got an incoming signal, Jake. It's from the enemy fleet. They're broadcasting something, a message. Put it through, Jake replied, his voice tight with anticipation. The screen in front of them flickered and a distorted image appeared. It was a figure, humanoid but with features that were sharp and alien. The creature's eyes glowed, its face expressionless. The voice that followed was deep, mechanical, and filled with an unsettling authority. Humans, you have awakened what you should have left in the past. The galaxy does not welcome your presence. Prepare to be erased. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. The threat was real. The alien fleet was coming and they were preparing to attack. Jake's pulse quickened. He could feel the tension rising, both in the ship and in his chest. The time for action had come. We can't wait for them to attack us, Jake said, his voice filled with determination. We need to take the fight to them. Dr. Williams nodded, his face grim. Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. We have the ship's weapons, but we don't fully understand what it can do yet. We need to stay on the move. Jake turned back to the control panel, his mind focused. The ship's weapons systems were powerful, but the enemy fleet had a numbers advantage. He had to outmaneuver them, use the ship's speed and agility to his advantage. The alien technology was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, but it was still untested in combat. It was time to see if it could hold up. He punched in the coordinates, setting the ship on a course toward the enemy fleet. The ship responded instantly, its engines firing with a force that pushed Jake back into his seat. The ship shot forward, faster than anything he had ever experienced. The energy in the air was thick with anticipation. As they neared the enemy fleet's position, Jake could see their ships in the distance. They were massive, dark structures, ominous and foreboding. But even as the fear began to rise in his chest, Jake reminded himself of the power they had at their disposal. This wasn't just any ship, it was a weapon, and he was its master. Hold on, Jake shouted to the crew. Here we go. The ship's first volley of energy blasts fired, streaking across the dark void toward the enemy fleet. The blast hit one of the alien ships dead center, and the explosion sent shockwaves through the surrounding ships. The enemy fleet retaliated. their weapons firing in rapid succession. The ship's shields flared with energy as the blasts collided. The sound of the impact reverberating through the ship. "We've taken a hit," Sarah shouted from the communications station, her voice tense. "Shields are holding." But not for long, Jake gritted his teeth. They couldn't let the shields fail, he had to act fast. The ship's weapons were powerful, but they needed to keep moving, stay unpredictable. The enemy fleet was well coordinated, and they would not hesitate to overwhelm them. "Prepare the secondary weapons," Jake ordered, his voice steady. "We need to disable their main ships before they can focus all their firepower on us." As the ship moved at incredible speeds, dodging incoming blasts, Jake fired another round of energy blasts, targeting the lead alien ship. The shots connected, and the alien vessel shook violently, sending debris flying into space. But the battle wasn't over. The remaining ships closed in, surrounding them, ready for the final push. Jake's eyes darted to the screen, calculating the odds. The ship's energy reserves were low, and the enemy fleet was relentless. The creature's voice echoed in his mind again, and this time, it was different, calmer, almost encouraging. "You have chosen the path of war. You will find your strength. In unity, the ship will guide you." With those words, the ship's system surged, and Jake felt a renewed sense of power. The ship wasn't just a machine. It was alive, and it was ready to fight alongside them. Jake locked eyes with Sarah and Dr. Williams, determination in their gazes. Together, they could survive this. Together, they could win. And with that, the final battle began. The final Gambith ship shook violently as the final wave of enemy fire slammed against the hull. Jake gripped the control panel, his knuckles white, as he fought to keep the ship on course. The alien fleet was relentless, its weapons firing with devastating precision. But Jake wasn't going to give up. He couldn't. The fate of humanity, Earth's lost history, and the knowledge hidden within the ship's ancient systems all rested on his shoulders. The voice from the alien device in the ship's systems was a constant presence in his mind, its words both encouraging and ominous. "You have chosen the path of war. The ship will guide you." But as the battle raged on, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something he hadn't fully understood. What was the ship truly capable of, and could they defeat the enemy fleet before it was too late? "Jake, they're closing in," Sarah called out from the communications station. "The shields are weakening, and they've got us surrounded. We can't keep dodging forever." Jake's pulse quickened. The ship's advanced technology had been enough to hold off the enemy for a while, but now it seemed as though their enemies were adjusting, adapting. The odds were growing slimmer by the second. The alien fleet was using tactics that Jake hadn't anticipated, clever, coordinated attacks designed to overwhelm their defenses, and now they were closing in for the final strike. A warning light flashed on the control panel, and Jake quickly checked the readings. The ship's energy reserves were nearly depleted. They couldn't keep firing the weapons at full power without risking complete shutdown. "We need to do something different," Dr. Williams said, his voice urgent. He was at the navigation console, scanning the ship's systems. "The ship's weapons aren't going to be enough. We need to turn the tide in our favor." Jake turned to him, his mind racing. What else could they do? The alien fleet was overwhelming, their firepower unmatched. The ship's advanced systems had given them an edge, but they were running out of time. That Dr. Williams glanced at the map on the control panel. "There's a dormant weapon system hidden in the lower levels of the ship," he said, his voice filled with both hope and fear. "It's powerful, but we've never activated it before. If we can get to it in time, it might just be our last shot." Jake didn't hesitate. "Where do we need to go?" "It's below the central reactor. We'll need to bypass security systems and make our way to the core," Dr. Williams explained quickly. "But we don't have much time. The enemy will be on us before we can power it up." Jake took a deep breath, turning to face the team. They were running out of options, but they still had one final chance. "Let's go," he said, his voice steady. "This is it." The team moved swiftly through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the cold, metallic hallways of the ship. The air was thick with tension, and every moment felt like it could be their last. As they descended toward the lower levels, the ship seemed to hum with a strange energy, almost like it was guiding them, as if it too knew the stakes. When they reached the reactor room, the sight before them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The core of the ship was vast, its glowing energy swirling in the center like a living entity. It was beautiful yet deadly. Dr. Williams quickly moved to the console, working to bypass the security locks. "We don't have much time," he muttered, his fingers flying over the keys. "The power surge from activating the weapon system will cause a massive energy drain. We'll have to fire it in one shot. If we miss, we're done." Sarah and Max stood by, weapons ready, keeping watch for any signs of the enemy. Jake watched as Dr. Williams worked frantically, his brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, the console beeped, and the doors to the weapons control room slid open. A low rumble filled the air as the dormant weapon systems began to power up. They're immense. Energy crackling in the air. It's ready, Dr. Williams said, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. Now, we fire. Jake quickly moved to the control panel and began activating the weapon. The energy in the ship surged and a deep, resonating hum filled the air. The weapon's massive cannon, hidden deep within the ship, began to charge. A blinding light flooded the room as the energy gathered. And Jake felt the power course through the ship, through his own body. The enemy fleet was in range. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Here goes nothing. He slammed the final button. And the weapon discharged. The blast tore through space. A beam of pure energy that shot forward at unimaginable speed. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down. The ship's systems groaned under the strain. And Jake could feel the ship vibrating around him. The blast hit the lead alien ship dead center. The explosion sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. A chain reaction of explosions followed as the alien ships struggled to retaliate. Their firepower useless against the intensity of the blast, the remaining ships scattered. Their formations broken, the energy beam ripped through the enemy lines, annihilating their fleet in one devastating strike. Jake watched as the battlefield cleared, the vast emptiness of space stretching before them once again. The ship's systems powered down, the glow from the weapon fading as the ship came to a halt. The battle was over, but as the dust settled, Jake knew this wasn't the end. The ship had given them a victory, but the warning had been clear: the enemy was not gone. They had only just begun. The voice from the alien device echoed in his mind once again. This is only the beginning. The war is far from over, Jake exhaled. The weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. The ship's power had given them the edge, but it was clear that the true battle for humanity's future had only just begun. The galaxy was vast and the enemy was relentless, but Jake had made his choice, and with it, the future of humanity was in his hands.